Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Anti-Siphon Anti-Cast. I have Jordan and Kent joining us. We also have Alyssa and Caitlin joining us. And so today they're going to talk about how you got hacked in 2025. And so we've been doing these webcasts for years. And so Kent and Jordan are part of our pen testing team. Alyssa and Caitlin are part of the anti-SOC team, which does continuous pen testing. And so they get a chance to see all the ways that you're vulnerable. And we have like a couple, about 600, 700, 1,000 pen tests that we do a year with reports.
800, yep.
Yeah, and so we get a chance to look through all of them and look collectively through all of them and then be able to go like, oh, well, there's some commonalities here. So Ken and Jordan, you've been doing this for years. Alyssa and Caitlin, you're part of the continuous pen testing team. You get a chance to see it all the time. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, you can always ask inside Zoom. We'll do the best we can to answer those questions at the end of the webcast today. But most likely they're going to answer them during the webcast. So that's cool. If you're not on Discord, go ahead and join us in Discord. And we thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I'm going to head backstage. And if there's any problems whatsoever, I'll come back. But for the most part, you guys are fine. I'll see you all in a little bit.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you very much. Truly. There's no introduction slide for the webcast today. So it's just, here's your title slide. You get to meet Kent, myself, Alyssa, Caitlin. We all kind of co-teach all of this material, share all this stuff with the world. So that's it. There's your intro.
This is the fourth year we've done this type of data analysis using some of the large amount of data we've collected at BHIS, and it's interesting. It's interesting to start seeing patterns. I mean, we saw patterns after the second year. We're seeing them kind of continue third year. Now, the fourth year of doing this, we're seeing things that are changing a little bit. And of course, you know, everybody is going to want us to talk about AI, and there's a part to play in that here somewhere as well.
So absolutely. And I think some of that is just because the marketplace is there's a fully automated supply chain marketplace available now to our adversaries, right? So an exploit gets published, a CVE gets published, and our adversaries are able to go out to this marketplace, find the exploit code, run through their engines that monitor the internet for associated services, and just smash. So from that perspective, defenders are now up against a very different world where you're up against machines that can make decisions really quickly. You're up against adversaries that are very well armed. And really, I think we're still in this situation where as defenders, we don't even know where all these risks are. And if you're struggling to keep track of the CVEs and the services you have exposed, you're up against an adversary that's definitely going to win. And so we always throw this executive problem statement slide in.
EPS, by the way.
EPS. You may hear this referred to as EPS. And so, Caitlin and Alyssa, I'm going to ask you this question on the front end because we don't really have statistics for initial access on your side. Can you talk about kind of entry points? Maybe each one of you wants to take one of the bullet points. I know what they are, and I think you're going to come up with the same answers that I have, but what is our continuous testing team doing to initially access the customers that pay you guys on contract?
Who's going first?
Caitlin, you spoke, you're up.
Cool. All right. So I would say number one is info stealers. So whenever somebody gets compromised by info stealer malware and their credentials are stolen from like their browsers, their cookies are stolen, things like that. So we monitor those for our customers, and then whenever we get them, we use them for initial access.
Does that include like credential reuse? Like if one of our customers' employees uses a work computer and one of their maybe Neopets account is compromised. Yeah, I'm choosing that one on purpose. Do we look for like, is that
Neopet password is exposed?
I know.
So we definitely use the credentials that we find for like credential stuffing across like all of our customers' authentication interfaces. It's funny that you mentioned Neopets though. It's actually Roadblocks, which is it's Roadblocks or it's adult sites is usually how the malware gets delivered to the home computers. So you know, if you ever see an advertisement for free Robux, don't trust it.
So Roadblocks, not a team building application for
Right. Did you say road or row? Because it's all Roadblocks.
That's what.
Yes.
Okay.
Not that old yet.
And Alyssa, what's your take? Number one entry point for continuous testing team. Number two, sorry.
I don't know where they rank, but I would say like social engineering. So like whether that's like some variant of some sort of phishing or whether that's like social help desk social engineering calls is one of the ways that we'll gain access to accounts.
Was just on a social engineering engagement, and we tried to do, the typical routine of like, yeah, I lost my phone, I forgot my password, whatever. And they're like, well, we really need you on a Zoom call. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. I'm not available to do that. I'm like, well, you need to come to the office. Like those were the two options. And I know at some point, even the proof of life over Zoom is going to, have some problems and be questionable, but it's still an interesting perspective that organizations are now requiring proof of life for that type of reset. So that's good.
Which is a very good idea.
Yeah.
And if you look at Malone's latest, he went 6 for 6 on credential resets. Like 6 targets, 6 password resets, 2 MFA, access to internal environment. Like that is
Scary good.
He is very, very good. So we have some, and I would add that Alice, like we have some seriously highly skilled social engineers, and we're still just acting like humans. I mean, imagine when computers can automate these processes. Anyway, we're gonna keep moving here. How do we compete with AI armed adversaries, right? That's the question here. If we're not fully automating response mechanisms to CVE publish, we don't have a good handle on our inventory controls, we're up against serious risks.
Yeah, and there's some organizations that still don't know where their vulnerabilities lie, right? There's kind of that first part of trying to figure that out.
And so these two got invited kind of last minute, but we're interested in their take because we don't get to statistically track their data. They're operating as full-time red teamers. Their job is to break in. It's not to write long reports that we can parse with, engines. However, this is our 4th year doing this. So it's about time we got in some other perspectives because, yeah, we have some really interesting statistics from our data sets, but we don't have that yet from CPT, though I'm guessing over time we will.
There's a reason we invited you. We want that data.
Yeah, you knew exactly where that was going.
Putting us on the spot, man.
You got this. You got this. So this is number 4. We are going to produce and publish a PDF slick of some kind. And as Jason mentioned earlier, there's a blog that's going to go live here in about 50 minutes. I think we're probably about 10 minutes in. So we did want to review some buzzwords, right? It's always good buzzwords. And depending on how this image renders, we've all seen this. Not everyone has seen the truck actually crash, though. There is a GIF floating around out there where the truck actually crashes. If someone could find that, post that in Discord, I would be super grateful because this
distracting.
Kind of leave you wanting more. Like me, I want more. I want to see this truck crash. So here is the current next generation AI buzzwords. This is real. Like we are dealing with vendors who are putting AI in everything, every single software product, every single commercial we see on TV, every single piece of hardware, everything is now integrating with machine learning and AI. So there's all of these buzzwords floating around that are being used to market this product to us. Is the product AI? Are we the product? Like what?
Yeah.
Where is this going? Like I'm nervous, to say the least.
I kind of mentioned Microsoft Ignite in pre-show banter. If you look at the direction that Microsoft is going, it's going to be heavily AI induced, right? It's all there. Copilot, they're going heavily on Copilot, and it's very interesting. Some of the mechanics that they're saying are going to be possible, from a defense perspective, and we're talking about defense because we're talking about security, but just from an operational perspective for businesses, what capability is going to be out there. The other side of that is if you've got all this new capability, you also have to be able to secure it, and kind of the roadmap for that out there as well. It's going to be interesting, and just seeing that all of the conferences like that now, they're talking about roadmaps for businesses. They all are going to be talking about AI. It's going to be significant.
Caitlin, Alyssa, are you integrating AI in your products, your flows, your operations, your documentation? How is the CPT team using this at this point?
Into our flow or into our techniques that we're using?
Any of it. Yeah. Just curious.
So yes. So one of the things that we actually, if we get access to an account that is like a Microsoft 365 sort of account, Copilot is one of the first places that we'll go to try to extract information to find maybe sensitive things that Copilot can access. And then we have also had customers who have like their own AI.
Bots, chats.
Yeah, well, not even chats, but like actually, their products are built on AI, and so one of our testers, Cameron, just recently had a fun time messing with one of those and convincing it to do some things that maybe it shouldn't.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
Wait, social engineering AI is going to be the thing then.
Yeah, we had a recent request from one of our customers to develop a video of one of their, I think it was their CEO, using AI, and it was pretty convincing.
So back to that proof of life thing. It's at some point, even that's going to have to change.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, yikes. And how does the prior generation to Kent and I, my parents, how do they like handle situations like this? And I mean, yeah, I'll stop there. It's not, it's like it doesn't feel very pretty. Like we're heading toward times where maybe it's not ugly. Like maybe AI, like I can embrace AI. That's great. But there's definitely some dark paths this thing could take, like potentially. So anyway, why this talk? And I struggled to get the formatting right on these first two. Like I couldn't get the spacing correct. Just if you're looking at the slides, it's like I couldn't quite get those first two sentences. I have no idea why that happened. I tried all kinds of stuff, but why?
I definitely messed with the PowerPoint presentation and just as struggled.
Ken's nickname is PowerPoint presentations are my passion.
Oh yeah, ever since high school. It's great.
That's true. It's so true. So what, like this Anthropic paper that we mentioned, maybe somebody could find that, drop a link to it. On November 13th, there was a widespread attack where Anthropic or whatever, maybe Claude was jailbroke and then used as part of a widespread attack across the internet. And that's definitely coming for all of us. Like if you expose a service to the internet, it is definitely coming for you. You're going to be in a situation where if you don't have strong inventory controls and you don't have automated patching, you're up against automated attacks. And that to me is just terrifying.
I love the idea. So, distributed denial of service, the things we used to think about before were like, NTP services, certain DNS services you could reflect the traffic from. Now from the perspective of, well, if everybody's got this AI thing that can do things, can we leverage it to point attacks at places and start using everybody else's AI to do things on our behalf? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the future.
I agree completely. So the next slide is this a bait and switch? What are you talking about right now? Like, why?
Everybody wants to hear about AI. We don't actually want to talk that much about AI right now because practically speaking, although the existential risk of AI is coming, the evidence and the data we have based off everything we've mined for 4 years now doesn't necessarily support that is the critical issue this second. So that's a thing. So is it bait and switch? Well,
no, the stats are coming. We're going to get there. We're almost there, truly. So let's go ahead and maybe look at another point about bait and switch. Like Caitlin and Alyssa probably weren't expecting to be dragged into this, but here they are. And there's a reason. Like they see vulnerabilities from a red team perspective. The statistics in this report may include some red team data, but it's not how the future looks, right? The future looks automated. And it looks like if you have a vulnerability exposed to the internet, it is going to get compromised once the vulnerabilities are found. And currently, for the most part, researchers are finding vulnerabilities and following the processes to report them through the CVE, KEV chains, right? They're doing this well, they're doing this right. What happens
in goodwill-ish?
In goodwill and good faith. What happens when the machines are trained to find the vulnerabilities? Do they necessarily have to throw these into the KEV and CVE chains and then automatically find vulnerabilities? And it's just wild out there. So we often in our external tests, I'm going to switch gears here slightly and prep for this next slide, which is kind of transitioning. But we often find in our external testing that our customers, even with mature environments, lose track of inventory. They lose track of service to back-end Operations. Like if you're not knowing what you're exposing, you're not managing your inventory well, it's a good idea to still have humans look at and document your processes, right? I still feel that pen testers have a future for a while. That doesn't mean my job can't be automated, but it does mean that, it's looking forward. I'm not telling my kids anymore that cybersecurity is a great field to go into.
Active Directory will still be here in 20 years.
So, okay. You want to transition? Let transition us, Kent. Get us over here.
Okay, so we've taken a bunch of data that we've gotten, and we've basically data mined it for trying to pull out the relevant things that, at the end of the day, led our pen testers to compromise of our customers. So is that a good analog for what's actually happening in the world? It's pretty close, right? And obviously we are now also starting to leverage AI in our operations as well. So we're starting now to, as the adversaries are going to use AI, so are we. It's going to be that same chase as always. But what does that look like in terms of that risk and the severity of risk and the actual quantifiable amount of compromise that can come from all these types of things, and where does it all start from? And from that perspective, we have that data. We've been doing a lot of pen testing for years now. We're able to now visualize these patterns and kind of see what it looks like. And the real question becomes there's organizations right now that they're not doing any pen testing, right? And it's a lot of times at startups, they don't think they need to, or they haven't done it yet, hasn't been on their radar of things they need to do.
Smaller businesses that can't afford it.
Yeah. And then that first time they get a pen test, they're like, oh, we were incredibly vulnerable. And the reality of it is, it's still a matter of time before compromise. And it's the case for everybody now. And, Jordan mentioned, what about our parents? How does AI come into their world? And what does that look like from, what happens when their accounts are compromised, whether it be bank accounts or whatever? And it's just a matter of realizing that at some point it does happen and you need to have a plan for that. But the first part is understanding, those first initial accesses and what that looks like. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the data that we have observed based off doing pen testing. And it's a pretty close analog to what's happening in the world from an adversary's perspective.
Yeah, and over the last few years, I would say when we've written these slide decks and we go read the Verizon data breach summary, we go look at CISA's most common vulnerabilities that get popped consistently, we're relatively in line in our data sets with the claims made by these organizations. And I would say similar, they may not be looking at red team data. They're looking at organizations that voluntarily say, we got compromised, here's the data about that compromise. So next up, this is kind of where we start to dive into the data just a bit. And 56,000 pages. I think when BB was here, he was holding his hand up. That's printed out like this tall in paper. I mean, that's a lot of paper. I would say, Alyssa, when you write tests, Caitlin, when you write traditional testing tests, how many pages are you producing in a day? And let's say six or 7 hours of behind the keyboard, full on testing, distraction-free work.
Is distraction-free work a thing?
Not when you're working with you. I think that so okay, I think yes, look, we go on many side quests. I learn many things when I work with you. Okay. We know this.
That. Thank you.
I think that you've told me the number for me. I think it's 16, 12 to 16. And I only know that because I'm pretty sure you've told me that number about myself.
I'm not watching statistics daily. That's not what I do.
Yeah, we have
lots of maths going on in here.
Yeah, math. And I'm saying 12 to 16 pages of highly polished, final product, deliverable to a customer quality test. Caitlin, when was the last time you wrote an external or an internal test? And I'm asking about those two because they are our most popular.
Oh, I don't know. It's probably it's getting close to a year probably since I've actually done a traditional test.
But she reads a lot of them because she is a tech reviewer.
That's fair. I still read quite a few of them as well.
It's certainly a lot of pen testing. I think there's something with our data to answer too, is we have so many 305 externals and 200 internals. And wow, that's a lot of externals. And oftentimes, to give you some insight into the data there, Oftentimes our external tests are paired with others. So you might have an external and an internal, or an external and a web app, or an external and a pivot if someone's already done an internal, where the external is like a confirmation of, yes, this is what your internet exposure looks like, but we also want to do that internal pen test. And on that maturity framework, that internal pen test is kind of one component of that. After you get past that maturity level, you're now looking at like the pivot slash, C2 or the assume compromise test. And
Assume compromise is a pivot.
yeah, and essentially you still get to the point that you're not doing like an assume compromise, but you're still maintaining that external because you want to validate your external controls as well. So that's why we've got so many of the external ones on there.
Yeah, agree. And it's a very popular product because it can be delivered effectively in a short amount of time, right? You're asking us for reconnaissance on your organization, vulnerability scan data, interpretation of that data, compromise where appropriate, credential stuffing. And I feel like there is a slide coming up here where we talk about some changes that Microsoft's made to its terms of service, where our primary target on externals used to be Microsoft 365 to validate credentials. They've changed some things that has made our lives very difficult. And I'm going to pose this question, so be thinking about this, Caitlin and Alyssa, please. What are they solving by changing their terms of service to reduce our use of credential stuffs?
You can answer this one.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So think about it. And I want that. So anyway, let's keep going here. So now be aware, we may say test and report. They're not interchangeable. Each report averaged 1-point change tests. So 1.4 tests. We're doing a little bit more than one a la carte service per report. And our average report is about 90 pages. And I would say our average report, we don't have this data on here, but our average report is about a week, right? Maybe a little more. So to Alyssa's point, 12 to 16 pages per day, plus polish, plus cleanup, plus scoping, 90 pages is about the same report length we've been producing for the last 4 years. However, I would argue here that our boilerplate data has gotten better over time. Kent's efforts to make sure that this boilerplate language that we use to describe vulnerabilities is well documented and easily accessible for our testers. So we are getting more efficient with our time, and it's allowing us to do better hacking with our time.
Consequently, our reports become more dense, at least in content, at least in the descriptions of severity, and our ability to find those types of vulnerabilities is getting more condensed into that same number of pages.
Agree. And then we are finding a critical vulnerability in 1 out of 6 tests. Do you have a definition for listeners and attendees here? What is critical?
Yeah.
When do we designate critical?
In our reports, critical has a very clear defined meaning. In terms of our presentation, we're going to use somewhat of the same definition, but we're going to extrapolate it just a little bit. In terms of in our reporting, how we define critical, it's essentially a vulnerability that presents itself in such a way that it can be immediately used for immediate compromise. And it's much more lengthy, the actual definition of that, but from the perspective of how we look at it, at least in the terms of this data, it's something that is immediately usable, that has impact, and it can be done right now. Meaning, like, if it's say a software exploit, a POC exists, proof of concept code exists, or exploit code exists, it's easily found, and it can be easily executed, and it has immediate results, right? Like, that's kind of the definition of that. Essentially, it is like compromise. It is meaning like, the nature of wherever this is at right now is in a state that is compromised, because it's impractical to think someone probably hasn't already done that in that environment.
Caitlin, Alyssa, can one of you address finding severities in continuous testing? How you handle this? Is it similar to traditional testing?
I'd say yes. There are some things that, because in CPT, our focus is more what a real world attacker would do. And so a lot of times we have findings that we will rate lower just because they're much less likely in that real world scenario. But generally, yeah, we tend to stick pretty close.
So again, closer look at probability then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, MFA and password reset is critical. And somebody calls customer and says, you got a problem, you need to review your procedures for handling password resets at your help desk.
Interesting.
That's interesting. All right, next slide. So another problem we have is that we often chain vulnerabilities. So you may have two mediums, like we see some MDNS traffic on your local network, but you're also not enforcing SMB signing. So we chain those and then we take over. And eventually, like, are two mediums to compromise
Two mediums
also a critical, right?
Yeah, it oftentimes will create a third. We'll typically escalate one of those vulnerabilities, the one that's most practical, the one that's most leading, to be critical. But sometimes, yeah, two mediums, like Jordan said, could lead to a critical severity. But we're kind of like now introducing two steps where it violates maybe a little bit of that. Like it's immediately compromised, it's easy to do, the code's there, and it's like done. It's already happened. We have confidence to like, yeah, this is you're probably already compromised if we're calling critical. Once you start chaining those attacks together, it's a little bit less likely that it's already happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would also add here a real quick shout out to some of our backend support. So BB and Jack have produced an amazing Power Automate function with some Power BI that parses our reports to produce the data you're seeing on screen. So this is live, like this is live data. However, I collected this data in October when Logan asked for it. So when I went and looked last night, we now have 153 criticals. So over the last 6 weeks, guess what? We've kept up with that. 1 out of 6 reports has a critical. We've added 15 more in the last 6 weeks.
We do have a great question, and it comes down to survivor bias. Basically saying that how many of these reports where we're saying there's criticals were new customers versus returning customers. And it's a great question because if you're on like a quarterly test, we're going to give you a critical, and then we expect by the next time we're testing you, it's remediated, right? And that's oftentimes the case. So that critical doesn't get counted twice. Again, there's some interesting data there, and it's a good point to look at because there is some survivor bias that's going to reduce the severity after that first test.
And I would also argue that we survive on our returning customers. We try to forge the kind of relationships where customers come back to us and stick with us for years, right? That's what we want. We want to deliver the highest quality product that results in customers coming back to us year after year after year. So on screen, you're going to see like in this data over the last 15 months, almost 2,000 high priority vulnerabilities. That's 1 every 28 pages, right? I mean, that's a lot. Like that is a lot. And where we go with that is hopefully, as we get further into this slideshow, we're going to talk about what vulnerabilities mean and how you can take the data we are sharing and make your lives a little better. So we'll get there, but ultimately, like this is a lot of interesting data. We've got a lot of statistical analysis here, and we're really trying to just share this and put this into some meaningful.
An alternate name for this discussion could have been how not to get hacked in 2026. If you take all of the findings we're going to talk about and say, what's the defense? Can we deploy it?
Yeah.
You're pretty close, right?
So here's another question I want you two to think about, Caitlin and Alyssa. What procedural changes can an organization make to fix password reset problems, fix social engineering? And I know it's practically impossible because we're always targeting humans and every human will be different, but think procedurally the kind of advice you can hand on this call out to fix help desk password resets. And next up, right? We've shown you a little bit of the data. This is a bit different. We've gone with top 10 lists in the past, the BuzzFeed style, just these 10 reasons you got hacked. Well,
it's more than 10.
Yeah, it's more than 10. And we could tell you those 10. Unfortunately, it's still very similar to the data you've seen us describe before, but we are going to show a little bit more of it.
And it's reasonably predictable too. Like if you ask any of the BHIS testers, I think, what are the things that are leading to compromise? They're already going to know, right? It's because we're doing that kind of day in, day out. And I think most people that are kind of watching the industry also kind of know these, right? What is the most critical one? You kind of already have a feel for what it's probably going to be. And I think right now, these are still kind of aligned with, I don't want to say common sense, but we've got the data to kind of back it up. So
Caitlin and Alyssa, how would you, as an organization that manages a help desk that people call into and get password resets, what's the solution? How do you fix remote password reset over the phone? How do you stop
Ooh.
John Malone from taking over your organization?
So the remote part I feel like is key there. Because we've definitely had some customers where they've actually required that you come in to the office to be able to reset your MFA or your password. So if you're working for a company that does have like a centralized like office location, that's a big one. That can definitely prevent those like over the phone sort of things. So not
Physical proof
allowing
of
over the
life.
phone at all.
So-
Yes. Yeah.
If there's anybody right now that's interested in making a new business, there is a business model for identity validation, in-person identity validation with locations throughout the country where organizations that require proof of
Wow.
life can utilize one of these identity validation services in person and have someone go to that facility, prove identity, and then have a password reset. Like there's an opportunity here, right?
That's interesting. Alyssa, how would you fix remote password resets? I love the theory, Caitlin, of physical in-person have to do it. And there are a couple stories that Kent tells in class occasionally about, I think one is about a college and one is about a transportation network. Alyssa, what would you do to fix this remotely?
So some things that we advise our customers do is like remove the ability for like IT or help desk to reset that user's password. So if you have like some sort of a self-service that your users can use, sometimes our customers will have like a third party. So like who is your manager and have your manager like kind of vouch for you that you are who you say you are, or some other person on your team. Those are some things that we've seen.
I like that. That's good. Yeah. It's almost a second factor before resetting a password. A human second factor. Oh, that's fair.
Hmm.
All right. So this slide was about change management. And really, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of change management being in the way of defenders fixing problems because you're beholden to policy and procedure. You're going to lose, your organization is going to get compromised if you cannot quickly and effectively automate patching.
This is not a discussion about how to get buy-in on change. That would be a whole different type of concept of study because it's big. The biggest thing right now I could say is that I kind of mentioned into some of our teams earlier this week was that, you know, whoever is the biggest roadblock for you in change right now is probably your best change advocate. Start leveraging them. And yeah, change management, yeah, it's a roadblock. It's meant to slow things down. Like that is its actual purpose, right? Is to slow things down, make sure everything's done safely without risk, or at least to reduce the risk. So yeah, you're gonna have it, but you still have to push forward through it. And the reason we bring this up is we're gonna be talking about vulnerabilities that require a change for remediation. So.
And a lot of you are also beholden to compliance frameworks and PCI, HIPAA, high-tech, SOX. These things say, before you modify code on your firewall or update firmware, you got to roll this out change management. So I almost named a vendor there. I don't want to name firewall vendors, but a critical firewall vulnerability was released about 2 days ago, okay? And it was in a product designed to provide WAF services. So if you're beholden to compliance framework that keeps you from updating that, and attackers already have the code, you're hosed. Like you're totally hosed, and you're going to get popped.
So very timely have Cloudflare on this slide too. They've had some self-inflicted wounds this week, but
the Ouroboros, right? We're eating our own tail here.
You do have to go through vendor management, obviously, with this and choose the best product. But the point is you have to have some sort of product that helps protect you.
You do. And I can't, is there, in your opinion, a better WAF out there right now than Cloudflare? Despite the fact that when they're down, 80% of the internet is having issues.
At least you're in good company. I mean, right now they're pretty solid.
Good company being down. All right. I won't argue with that. That's pretty good, actually. And on to the show. Finally, our feature presentation. I like this slide, Kat. This made me really happy.
I think for us to be able to use all these images, we have to say about how these images are great use for transition into the feature presentation.
And
so these are
here's our
feature presentation.
Yeah,
about data. And vulnerabilities.
So let's talk specifically about some of the vulnerabilities, right? Not a top 10 list. We're just going to talk now about some of these vulnerabilities. And I wasn't sure if the actual slide deck play button would play our automations. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. We got a couple more clicks. There's some automation coming in here. ADCS, right? We're blind by default. So if somebody compromises your ADCS network, Alyssa would like a word because she could fix this. Why are we blind, Alyssa?
So by default, sorry, I was answering a question. So you're asking me why we're blind with ADCS
Yeah.
stuff? Okay. So by default, ADCS certificate authorities does not have auditing enabled.
Simply
So
stated, we're blind unless you turn it on. Insufficient.
We teach how to fix that. We also have blogs how to fix that. It is interesting. And typically when we talk about this, Drew and I have a discussion about what defaults are and why defaults aren't necessarily practical for every business. And we're not going to get into that, but I bet that default changes here in the next years.
Agree. I hope so. This is one of the points when Kent and I argue about default configurations where he's finally like, okay, you're right. Yeah, maybe this should be on by default. Oh yeah. Going back here real quick. So all these blogs, kind of Alyssa here is the ADCS documentation expert. She has gone through, written up all the different attack chains, the techniques, how to fix this, how to make yourself not blind. Go check out the blog series. They're all out there.
Oh, you missed
Caitlin and I did webcasts on that as well.
That is true. That is true. Kent did want to catch us all up here. I love talking about ADCS because it has been our #1 privilege escalation technique over the last 3 years. However, there's other things we use to find criticals.
Can I talk about Jenkins really quick?
Oh,
Jenkins is a great platform for CI/CD pipelines, automation, and DevOps world. So if you have developers, ask them if they use Jenkins. The next question is, ask them, is your Jenkins, does it require authentication? And the answer, of course, should be yes. But if it's not, the cool thing about Jenkins from an attacking perspective, from an adversary's perspective, is it gives you all kinds of great information. There's 2 components to it that are really useful. You can store credentials that are used by pipelines and automation inside of Jenkins. If you don't require authentication on Jenkins, anyone can go and capture those credentials. The other piece is that when it does that automation, it's using different systems to do that. And oftentimes you'll submit sensitive data through environmental variables inside of Jenkins to its runners, its pipeline runners. And when you do that, if you don't require authentication on Jenkins, you're able to go pull back all of those environmental variables for all of the builds on all of the jobs. So we've written scripts that just essentially go through and pillage all of that data and look for sensitive data. We find AWS keys, we find clear text credentials, we
service principal tokens, pretty much
all of it. It's all there, right? So we've gotten to places now where you've got a DevOps team, they're in charge of making your application, but because Jenkins is exposed and it's not requiring authentication, even on the internal, we get in there and we find service accounts that lead us eventually to privilege. So when we talk about missing authentication, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
And again, we're in the critical. So remember our definition of critical. It is from 0 or from very low priv to complete and utter compromise. Next up, we got some high findings here of interest, and really more than the unpatched and unsupported software. I did want to point out that the link here mentioned as the trend, where about 1/3 of attacks, according to this, is university-based research. It may look like a shady link, but it is worth investigating. About 1/3 of attacks are against unpatched, unsupported systems on the fly now with exploit code. So you don't even have to think about it. If you can't patch and you're not patching, something's going to get compromised. SMB signing, we get tired of saying the same thing over and over. SMB signing is still very important for you to implement, to enforce where you can. Ran into an organization recently that really couldn't because of the cluster configurations and the amount of data flowing in and out of the cluster. Worked with Jack. Jack compromised the cluster with SMB signing and NTLM relay, and then we used that to escalate. So basically we went from smart card, not knowing the password of the end user, to full domain compromise because of SMB signing. This is just a recent test, so I thought I'd throw that story out there.
We should add that we have had critical vulnerabilities of SMB signing not required as well as unpatched and unsupported software. We've had findings of that type that have led to critical in severity, but in terms of like the actual quantified values, they didn't quite, they weren't as highly quantified as like ADCS configurations.
Yeah, exactly. So credential attacks do dominate the breach marketplace. Like it's just how people are breaking in. And so Alyssa, Caitlin, Microsoft changes its terms. So we can no longer credential stuff, steal our data. And I know what Kent's going to say. Kent's going to say it was never our data. We shouldn't be allowed to use it anyway. What is Microsoft fixing by not allowing security researchers, penetration testers, auditors to, test these credentials is kind of, that feels weird, but it's basically guess and check these credentials against their services. It's uncomfortable for me. I don't love this, but I do understand their position.
So my question would be, if I'm inside of like an internal network and I password spray or I credential stuff, some sort of service internally. So if we're saying like those passwords aren't ours, what's the difference? What's the difference between me accessing a corporate resource that is third-party hosted versus accessing an internal corporate resource?
So I'll take a stab. And Jordan's partially right. I will say it was never our data to begin with, but that's fine. Adversaries already know that it's not their data and they're going to use it anyway because they don't really care. They're already criminals. But aside from that, Microsoft's perspective might be a couple fold. One is, sure, there's a liability component to it.
Mhm.
I don't know how big of an issue that is for them, honestly. I think more practically speaking, they have a product that helps you do password sprays, and they can do this legally in their own enclave to help you build a better product and secure things internally using Microsoft rather than using a third-party vendor to do that. Is that the case? I don't know. I mean, certainly Defender is going to be stronger and stronger over time. And if those features of Defender include things like credential stuffing against user accounts, password filtering based off breached credentials, like that's good. Does that mean that you don't need a third party to kind of also go back and attest to that? Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all like that to be the case, but also there's some liability aspects to it, right? And that is, it's one thing for us to say, hey, we're going to try these credentials we found on our customer. But what happens when we say we want to use Azure to be able to arbitrarily point and launch attacks at other fourth parties, right? That starts to look like a different conversation. And I think some of those changes in terms of service address that, but maybe in a way that also ends up kind of preventing us from doing some things that we typically otherwise would have against our third party and second party customers.
What does this fix?
Well, it certainly gives Microsoft the ability to make a new product and kind of corner the market on it.
There it is. Got it.
Did I mention I'm Microsoft certified?
I love Microsoft. I, for one, hail our Microsoft overlords.
If someone said I'm biased, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
I'm in. Count me in. There's a bunch more high findings, but I found this one to be this was about as surprising as anything I saw in the data. And that's because we took our MFA finding, or lack thereof MFA implementation, and we are really extrapolating out kind of specifics. You have a web application that supports user name and password, but no MFA. You're not globally enforcing MFA. So inside your network, compromise can access Microsoft services without MFA. Let's see, external app. You have integrated, say, Snowflake and not enforced MFA globally. So an admin compromise from, say, an AWS account jumps over into Snowflake. Now we've got production data. We go from dev to production. I believe I wrote that one up, and that story is real. And then multi-factor authentication bypass, like this one.
That's my favorite. You have it deployed, it worked, you've tested it, but there's one piece you forgot to configure, and it's a bypass, so you don't actually use it. In terms of Microsoft has lots of authentication endpoints where you say, well, you have MFA deployed on almost all of them except for that one, and that's the one we're going to get in with.
Yeah, and there's another one here, not immediately required. Back in the day when you would deploy Exchange, Bo had reported to Duo this window of time after you installed Exchange, install Duo, configure Duo. There was a little window there where MFA wasn't enforced. So we have this situation where, yeah, you got MFA, but not if you're fast enough. So race condition in username password authentication and access to service. So this is in no way a slight on Duo. Duo has been amazing to work with. They have supported us throughout this process. This was reported to them. This is not a problem now. This was Mail Sniper 2016. This is a long time ago, but we are still seeing interesting and related.
If you deploy an
scenarios.
application and you say that application is going to use federated services or OAuth services, but that application also still allows native authentication if you go to a different URL endpoint, that becomes a bypass because you can authenticate there and not require that MFA platform at all that's using OAuth or federated services. So there's a lot there. Just make sure that if you're logging in someplace over the internet that it requires a multi-factor.
So a lot there, a lot of multi-factor stuff. Some more high findings. These are still relatively common. Insecure name resolution protocols. This is usually for the first time pen test customers who get an external internal combo and turn us loose, right? We're still seeing this in a percentage of our tests, right? At 56,000 pages and we're reporting this 87 times, we're reporting this every 700th page. Something like that.
Let's talk about file share vulnerabilities. Okay, so this always comes up. Someone says, well, where do you want us to put this clear text password? And it's like, okay, there are scenarios where you need to store clear text passwords. We would say in a password manager is better, but what about like web.config where you've got your SQL connection string? Okay, maybe you don't want that file share shared with everyone, right? So we pair these two together. It's file share vulnerabilities, but it's clear text storage of passwords typically paired with weekend TFS share permissions, meaning everyone has access or a certain large low privileged user groups have access to file shares that contain privileged credentials.
And I would add here another question for Alyssa and Caitlin. In your attack surface management and the way CPT looks differently at customers, how often are you seeing things like missing authentication? A service exposed that presents some type of data that could be used to leverage additional attacks or that results in compromise.
I don't actually, I think a handful of times, not.
Yeah. And the customers that come to you are mature, right? They are ready. They are prepared for red teams. They are ready for initial access testing, and that makes sense. However,
a weird one. I got to win.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a weird one is a lot of organizations have a huge hypervisor cluster, and then the back end of the hypervisor cluster for storage is like a SAN or it's got LUNs, and you're able to access that data. The only thing that can access that data is like the fiber channel for the hypervisors or whatever you want to call, whatever technology you're using. But one of the things that gets kind of weird, right, is that fiber channel, that SAN, that LUN, whatever it is on a isolated VLAN, right? So that the hypervisors can access it, but nothing else can. It's probably running at 10 gigs, something really performant. But now you're reliant on the network stack to be able to secure that VLAN. And what happens if a misconfiguration says that VLAN is tagged on everything? All it takes now is an adversary to drop on the network and say, yeah, I want to be joined to that VLAN. That's all it takes. And all of a sudden now they're on that SAN, they're on that LUN, they're on that fiber channel, whatever it is. The key thing here is a lot of times when you go through deployment of that SAN, that storage facility, whatever, you're not actually applying any authentication to it because your security control was always that isolated VLAN. So as soon as that is interrupted by some other attack chain, then you've got a problem, and now all that data is visible. And if we can get backups, if we can get snapshots, if we can get VHDs from your hypervisors, I mean, that's got it all. So
I would say we've gotten a lot better about checking for LDAP signing and channel binding. Either one of these two fixes the LDAP relay or, HTTP to LDAP relay that we use so consistently to locally privilege escalate, to interact with remote systems, authenticate as other users, and we compromise browsers. So channel binding is basically cryptography. Doc Blackburn was on a little bit ago. It's a cryptographic enforcement of a conversation between an authenticator and the authenticatee. So they agree, and if that's tampered anywhere in the chain, you've broken it. So you don't have to implement both LDAP signing and channel binding, but either one fixes a very common technique we use to escalate privileges.
or do both.
Yeah, or do both. And I wanted to give a shout out here to Gabe, as always. This guy he continues to push the front end of our testing methodologies, and SCCM has really moved up this list. So number one privilege escalation technique is ADCS. Number two, this is domain privilege escalation, is SCCM and MECM. And Gabe has always been so willing to share and jump in with people and help people. We are seeing this now in more and more tests as it's become
If you're
methodological.
using SCCM, you have to ask the question, did you deploy it securely? And that's kind of what it all comes down to. Are the service accounts that SCCM is using, are they appropriately low privileged?
Has that attack chain kind of made its way into CPT pivots when your customers ask you to come in, Alyssa, Kaylin?
I think that Pixie has a few times,
Yep.
but
yeah.
aside from that, not a ton. And we have had instances where like doing things like the remote registry, things like that, it gets detected
Get
like
you burnt.
immediately.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love
And
the,
your ops are done. You have to be quiet.
yeah, I love the Pixie stuff, SCCM with Pixie. So you start a machine on the network and it says, yep, I am who I am, or I need to be reset. If it needs reset, it needs to pull an image off the internet or off of your network. And if that image contains credential material, we're just going to grab it, right? That's kind of the idea there.
Exactly. And those usually contain sufficient instructions to authenticate the system and join it to a domain.
Yep.
So, all right, next up, some medium findings. We're kind of moving down the chain here. There's only a couple slides left. We figured we'd put less slides together, keep the material dense, and kind of talk through some of this stuff. The questions have been great. Kent, you got anything interesting in the Discord feed or course chat or
Quite distracting.
chat?
I would say correct horse battery staple is not a good password. We'll start there because it's well known. It's also using English words for the seed for the password. In terms of weak password policies, yeah, we still see them. We still see some out there. There are 8 characters, and it's kind of missing the point. You need to get to the point that you've got strong passwords. Strong looks like greater than 15. If you can get to greater than 20, do that. But again, weak horse, what is it? Correct horse battery staple, not a great password anymore. And just avoid English words that don't have typos and that don't have, punctuation in passwords. Get to that point that you've got those going there.
Exactly. Vulnerable and outdated components. This is one of our most common findings in web application testing, which should make you nervous. It means that most of the web applications deployed on the internet are in some way vulnerable to either the underlying framework components, the stack itself, Apache. Rarely do we see that patched in a consistent manner and managed. And so now you have a web application built on all kinds of frameworks and hipster coding languages and wild things that have
And what about
complicated.
what about your CMS platforms? WordPress is obviously a huge one. You want to have new functionality in your application. So now you install a plugin into WordPress and now it does it. But are you managing that plugin? Did you test that plugin? Do you know what the security vetted, components of that application, of that plugin are? Not just WordPress, but you're bringing in third-party code into your WordPress application. So that is a significant concern as well. And then insufficient DLP and egress filtering, being dropped on a network, especially with assumed compromise, one of the first things we'll do is say, hey, we're on your network. Can we get back out of your network? And if we can start to create that egress channel for C2 where, maybe you block port 22 because you know the SSH is bad, but did you block port 80? Maybe you didn't because you need it for web traffic. You need to start looking at actual protocol level inspection on your egress.
Great. All right, we got 3 more slides to get through, so 6 or 7 minutes. Here we go. Sensitive data unencrypted. This is something we see on internal networks a lot, allowing access to admin pages, services like FTP, SNMP v1 and v2. These are all clear text and they flow across your network. So now if you're doing any kind of network logging, whoever's reviewing your network logs has access to your login credentials. Like clear text is still super common inside networks. One of our really common assumed compromise findings is access to commonly abused administrative utilities. If you allow us access to PowerShell, PowerShell ISE, command, and all the underlying development-based things that are packed on Windows OS, there's a very distinct possibility they will be used against you.
SNMP, I love this. So on Windows, you can install an SNMP service so that you can query system information off of SNMP, and the default community string is something like public, right? Everybody kind of knows it. You can be able to enumerate data off of it. What's interesting about the SNMP service for Windows is that it will give you process information, like process command line string invocation. So if that system has any services that are running with command line arguments that might include sensitive material, we just pull it off of SNMP enum, right? And we just go and say, hey, give us all the information from SNMP. And if there's command line invocation strings out here that have sensitive data, we're pulling them out and trying to use them.
Absolutely. Some more medium findings. The fun one here, in my opinion, is Microsoft Store. So we're still seeing this pretty regularly, and we do love to report it because we use it to install things like Kali Linux or, a community edition of a database tool that allows us to interact with your servers. So one of the things we do on pivots is run just a tool like PowerUp SQL that checks for defaults. Anytime we find a default, we kind of need a UI to be able to interact with it. We don't need a UI. Sorry, that was. It's nice to have a UI like dbeaver to perform, direct interaction with the data.
It makes the data a little bit more consumable for a reader of our reports, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Especially if you're in Windows and system administrators are in Windows, they kind of haven't a better feel for things that are in Windows and GUIs. So
yeah. Missing application control, tester tool.exe. You would be shocked how often we are able to properly obfuscate tools like Rubius and Bloodhound and just run them directly from the command line. This is one of those situations where the finding is missing application control. Don't let us run tester tool.exe. Nor should Bob in accounting, Jane in finance. They don't need access to these tools, so start limiting them. Oh, one more slide. This is kind of how to prevent getting hacked. I would say, do your diligence, get pen tests if you need support for improving your organizational security posture. I know it's hard to argue these days for not having some AI do this thing for you, but inventory controls are going to go a long ways. And I would say there's 3 of us. Each one of you take a moment and say what the most important things in your opinion are on kind of how to prevent getting hacked.
Don't deploy at default, or deploy at default, but then change all the defaults.
Alyssa, what do you got? Sage advice.
I don't know. I'm shooting blank. I was looking for something specific to answer a question.
Social engineering one was good.
Yeah.
I like it. Update your processes, right?
Yeah, I think it's like practicing the principle of least privilege. I think that goes back into social engineering is something that
Yeah. Good one.
Yeah, that's an interesting point is should someone that's calling in be able to reset their password? Like least privilege, should an entity, a principal calling in be able to reset a password? Maybe not.
Caitlin, what you got?
Why are you making me go last?
It doesn't matter. Zach's here too.
Yeah, Zach, what's your answer?
Oh, now you want to go last.
Can you ask the question again and I'll tell you? I'm sorry.
What would you recommend companies do to avoid getting hacked? And then I'm gonna go ahead and switch here. Here's some kind of bullet points on screen, but
more end user awareness training.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that is a good one.
That's back to social engineering too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have some more things. Zach, can you tell us what the Free Labs free thing is? Because that came up. We've been talking about it a lot as a company, and we thought we'd throw it up on the slide here.
The Free Labs free. That's the first I'm seeing that URL. Is that
the stuff?
Yeah, is that all the John Strand resources with the?
It sure is.
Yeah. So, I can't click on it from here, but I'm just guessing that, yeah, John Strand, hands-on labs. So if you guys have ever, participated in like John's SOC core skills or, the MITRE attack class. I can't think of the name of it. I don't know why it's like not coming.
Getting started with MITRE attack.
Yep. These are some of the labs that he has done in those classes, so you guys can access them and do them for free anytime you want. So you can download, the files that you need and follow along. And yeah, that's the best way to get hands-on, training.
Environment. I believe that form you go to does have the ability for you to specify some sensitive information, something you might consider sensitive, like your address. You don't have to give that. What they're looking for there is the ability to communicate with you. If you want to give an address, fine. You might get some swag in the mail. If you give your email address, that's how you're going to get set up with that those free resources.
And if you can't access those resources on your computer because your computer's not powerful enough to run it, if you check out our calendar, anytime John is running one of his Pay Forward What You Can classes, so it's any of the 3 Pay Forward What You Can classes, you get access to the online virtual labs. So whether you pay $0 or you are able to pay forward what you can, you'll get access to those virtual labs so you can follow along, from your browser. So you don't have to have a powerful computer to run any of those labs. So essentially you can run these labs for free on the web.
And that's it for the webcast today, folks. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. It matters to us. Caitlin, Alyssa, y'all are awesome.
One thing before we do leave, though, I have a CTF for today's webcast. So if I can figure out how to navigate my way through Windows 11 right now, I will go ahead and put that in our webcast CTF chat right now. So you guys, if you don't have access to the webcast CTF chat, just throw a comment in the live chat and we'll get you added to that channel. But we will be picking the winners next Monday live on talking about the news with John Strand and Corey and that whole crew. So if you guys want to participate, check out the CTF channel and good luck to you guys. We'll be giving away one full year of on-demand access to anti-siphon training, and we'll also be giving away one free class of your choice. So good luck to y'all.
I'll stick. That is fascinating.
It's such a cool experience, and we do these for every webcast every single week. So whether you tune into an anti-siphon webcast or a Black Hills information security webcast, we'll be doing some of the CTFs. So make sure you guys stay tuned to that. Make sure you all check out Wild West Hackin' Fest, where we'll have Jordan, Kent, Caitlin, Alyssa. We're gonna have the whole crew. So very excited for Wild West Hackin' Fest coming up next year, February 2026. So if you guys need any, and if y'all need anything from anti-siphon training, private training, team-led training, it's all hands-on, instructor-led. Please reach out to us. We're happy to help you out. If you need any services, such as consulting, penetration testing, SOC services, reach out to us at Black Hills Information Security. We'd be happy to help you there as well. And that's it. That's all we got. Thank you all for joining. We appreciate you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate you all.
Kill it with fire, Ryan.